Good morning. Is it still morning? Barely. Um, Thank you so much for having me. I am really honored and grateful to be here. I also, this has happened a couple times recently where I'm like, why am I on this stage? I have a lot of imposter syndrome in rooms like this where like I have to follow Marion and these incredible students who are doing, I'm like, am I even a woman in technology? I'm usually hanging out with middle school students and power tools. So I just want to acknowledge like that the name of this conference, the Brain Trust, is so fitting. I'm really excited and honored to be part of the conversation. And I'm sort of reminded that when we think about and talk about technology, that especially in a room that is predominantly women, that we do all have a place, and that technology for me has always sort of meant the use and creation of tools that increase connection, that respond to the needs of a community, and that have this like deeply ingrained sense of optimism for what the future can look like. And I think that we all share that. So thank you for having me here. I'm gonna just share my story, which I think is like the best thing we can possibly do in times like this. And I have a couple things that I'm gonna share through the work of Girls Garage, through some of the projects my students have done, and some lessons. I'm not going to call them wisdom, but these are lessons and sort of themes in my work that I think may resonate with this group. So I want to just start at the very beginning. I was raised in a true matriarchy. My mother is in the middle. I have two sisters. My mother is Chinese, and my father is French, and I was raised in this like village of women. My mother is one of the most ferocious tiger mothers that ever walked the earth. She's like 5'3". My mother's mother, who I called Ping, was equally fierce and also tender. And my father's mother, who's French, was, by some descriptions, one of the meanest women, but I always kind of like got her vibe. She was just like, no BS, also like 5'1", so there's a lineage of short women as well. But I start here because as I go through my career and I think about the things I'm trying to share with my own students, a lot of my sort of ingrained values come from the great privilege of being raised by such amazing women. My grandparents, so I'm half Chinese and half French, coincidentally, both of my grandmothers were librarians and both of my grandfathers were engineers. So if there was like a Venn diagram of those two things, I totally believe that where I ended up in this like weird world of architecture and building and art is that crossover. So I do have them to thank for instilling in me a deep curiosity. Both of my grandmothers were like, oh, you have a question? Let's go look it up. Not on our phones, which weren't a thing then, like the set of encyclopedias or the public library. And both my grandfathers were very much like, oh, you have an idea? Let's go build it. So both of these instincts to ask questions and then respond and problem solve are in my blood. When I was 15, so I should also say that I grew up in like a small community in Northern California that was, I'm going to say 98.9% white. And I was one of the only non-white students in my school, like really up until 10th grade, I think. And so a lot of my childhood, I just remember this feeling of like not belonging and of constantly trying to find like my thing that would make me feel like I had a place. And so when I was at 15, maybe 16, I was in high school, I was invited to go to Central America, to Belize, with this group of other high school students from all around the country on a service trip to build a town park. And I had sort of like dabbled, like I grew up making things with my grandfathers and like working with my hands a lot, but I never really like made the connection that that's like a thing I could do as a grown-up, as a career, as an identity. And so this opportunity was huge for me because it was the first time in Belize, building this town park with my own hands, that I realized that the act of building was like a true sense of power for me. It was the first time I ever felt like I had any power as like a 5'2" mixed race teenager. But also, it was the first time I ever felt like I could contribute something to the world. This was a project that still exists. It's in a small town in Belize. And the act of building it was not just about like learning how to use the tools. We got to work alongside local masons and carpenters, and I learned how to use a machete to like level a field of weeds. It was amazing. But also, like, this is a public space, and so we were able to think about, like, what does it mean to build a public space in a town in which you do not live, where there's a little bit of, like, embedded imperialism in there. Like, what is your role as a citizen, and how does the act of building serve that? So I was, like, so blessed to have this opportunity at such a young age, because it set me up for a whole career of basically just doing this project over and over and over again for now 30 years. So I went on to study architecture. I went to UC Berkeley, and then I went to the School of the Art Institute in Chicago for my master's degree, which was actually an MFA. It's not a professional architecture licensed program, which was on purpose. I wanted to be at a school that was deeply creative, that was deeply embedded in making, but still architectural. And so I graduated in 2005. And I was lucky enough, so has anyone been to Millennium Park in Chicago? Okay, so Millennium Park, which was supposed to open in 2000, hence the name Millennium Park, was still not done when I graduated in 2005. So before I graduated, I had a work study position through the museum. Doesn't matter, but through the museum that was connected to the park, and also the addition, the new Renzo Piano edition for the Art Institute. This is a huge, massive, multi-agency project. So as I'm graduating, this is like my first job on a construction site. I'm like 23. And this second time, I remember feeling like, okay, first there was Belize, and now there's this. Like, I get to be part of this massive project that is, again, a public space that is shaping the way people have access to public space, shaping who gets to shape that public space. And I'm also like this tiny little 23-year-old on a job site, like technically project managing and wearing a hard hat. So there's like, again, this like imposter syndrome of like, do I belong here? So as I'm entering into this world of architecture and building, I also had $85,000 in student loans, and I had that like nagging pressure of, okay, now I have to be a grown-up. I have to go get a job with a 401k. Also, what's a 401k? And just like that, you know, I don't know if some of you students are feeling this, but like, a part of it was parental, sort of, but part of it was just like societal. Like, now I'm done learning, now it's time to go be a grown-up. And so I took a job at a retail clothing company based in San Francisco, that I won't name, but you might be able to figure it out. And I was a store architect for most of the stores west of the Mississippi. So this sounds really great in practice, but what I found, I should say I made it there 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks I worked there, my job consisted mostly of like getting a call from store number 8264 in Phoenix who said, oh, we need to repaint our dressing rooms. And I would go to this binder and open it up and say, oh, it's Benjamin Moore number. Deeply uncreative work. And so I had this moment of like, this cannot be what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. And so during that third week, and on my last day, I went into a meeting that was about 2 hours longer than it needed to be, that was exclusively about the renovations of new dressing rooms, and specifically what doorknobs we should pick. And I understand there's like, okay, there is some accessibility and universal design conversation, and like that's, I get it. But like 2.5 hours for doorknobs, I was like, I can't do this. So I quit 30 minutes later. And that was 2007. And that's the last time I worked for anyone else but myself. So on the heels of that experience, what I realized is that being on that site in Belize, and again in Millennium Park, that there was something inside me that was like, this is what I mean when I say building. This is what I mean when I say architecture. And so at the core of that was two things. One was building spaces that were accessible to the public, democratic spaces. And the other was like doing the actual building myself, ideally with a community of other people, and even more ideally, young people. Especially in Belize, like the act of being around other teenagers who Like, when do teenagers get to say, this is what I want the world to look like, and then actually enact it? So there's something so magical about that. So to make a long story short, I started a nonprofit. This is now January 2008. I started a nonprofit with $1,000. I was still living with my parents, having quit the doorknob job, which they were not thrilled about. But I just knew, like, this, if I'm going to do the kind of building I believe in, like, it has to be this way. So forming a nonprofit was this, like, legal way of putting a flag in the sand and saying, like, I'm going to figure it out. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to run a nonprofit, but also the act of making it a nonprofit cemented the commitment to some kind of public benefit. So after forming this nonprofit, I did what anyone with a new business would do, which is to email every single person you know and ask for help, including people that were like famous designers, some of whom did write me back. And I was just like, this is my idea, please have coffee with me. Through like 40 different coffee meetings and people who were very generous with their time, I ended up getting in contact with a superintendent of a public school district in rural North Carolina. This is a person who apparently had picked up a copy of Dwell magazine. There was like a blurb about my newly founded nonprofit in there. I'm like, what superintendent in rural North Carolina is sitting around reading Dwell magazine? But okay. So he got in touch with me and he said, look, I'm a newly appointed superintendent of a failing school district in eastern North Carolina. I am down to try anything we haven't tried before. Will you come out here and help me think about how we could integrate design in specifically the public high school? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I went down there, and on my flight down there, I'm thinking, like, what am I even going to pitch to this person? Like, am I just there to listen? Does he want me to show up with ideas? So within, like, 4 hours of talking to this person, his name was Dr. Chip Zollinger. He has since sadly passed away. But he was like, oof, like one of the real renegade educators who was truly down to, like, buck the system. And in this 4-hour meeting with him, I somehow cooked up this potentially harebrained idea to write and teach a high school curriculum and move down there, write and teach a high school curriculum that was essentially a shop class with community purpose. So, I took shop class in high school. I think I made like a birdhouse for my mother that she may or may not have. Fine, like those are all great projects, but I pitched to him, like, let's use the skills that a shop class teaches to also like raise up this town of 2,000 people that doesn't see a lot of new things very often. So he looked at me and he was like, great. The first day of school is August 12th, and that's how I became a high school teacher. So anyway, these are two of my very first high school students as part of this shop class with community purpose program. And this was a pilot. It was also like the first real thing I did under my nonprofit. So this is like, I don't have a resume. I don't have a proof of concept. I'm just like making it up, as we all sometimes are. But I just knew, like, in my gut that there was something there. And so over the course of a school year, I had 13 students. We worked together to design and build a farmer's market for this town of 2,000 people. Is anyone from North Carolina? Okay, do you know where Bertie County is? Okay, it's like halfway between Raleigh and the Outer Banks. It's like really in the middle of nowhere off of 40, and then you go up 17. So I live in Berkeley, California. Now there's a farmer's market on every corner. In rural North Carolina, in this town, it's called Windsor, the closest farmer's market was 80 miles away. And this is also a town that has an agricultural legacy. Like, there is historical memory and institutional understanding of like what it means to farm the land. And so the idea of forming a farmer's market was something that a lot of people were very excited about. So my students designed it. June 10th or whatever is the last day of school. Everyone is like, yay, it's summer. They go get on their jet skis. And I say to my students, I'll see you on Monday at 6 a.m. on this job site. So the whole summer we worked on the job site to build the design for the farmer's market that they had designed themselves. And actually, if I go back, these are some of the very first models that they built. Also, when I say like I don't know what I was doing, I truly did not know what I was doing. And so I taught this class as an architecture studio, the same way I had been in architecture studios in college and in grad school, because that's all I knew. So anyway, so we go to build this thing. It's over the summer. It's like 120 degrees, like 400% humidity. It was miserable. We would work from like 5:30 a.m. to like 12:30, and then we would just like melt and go home. But at the end of the summer, this is what they built. This is the Windsor Farmers Market. If you're ever driving out to the Outer Banks, hang a left on 17, and you can go check it out. It's still functioning and standing and open every Sunday, Saturday. So this is a 2,000 square foot public structure that was designed and built by 16 and 17-year-olds. And the beauty of this building is not the building itself, right? It is the fact that it was built by young people in a town that doesn't see a lot of new structures. It was also built in this way that was like very public. Like the construction site was 17-year-olds in hard hats, me as the foreperson. It was a weird scene. And people would drive by and like rubberneck, like, what is happening over there? And that was kind of the point too, right? Like, I want people to be asking, who's building that thing? And it doesn't look like your normal construction site, but why can't every construction site look like that? Why can't every construction site have a female super and be intergenerational? So at the grand opening of the farmers market, I should also say we didn't just have to build a farmers market, we also had to like start a farmers market and get people to come and sell things. So when it opened, we had 10 vendors. Now, I can't even do this math. This was 2010. 16 years later, there's like 48 vendors. It's still thriving. But at the grand opening, the mayor came out and he gave my students the key to the city, which was an actual key. And it was like this big and brass, and he hands it to my student, Karan, who's here in the front in the striped shirt, and he goes, oh, and it's also a bottle opener. I was like, okay. But anyway, then Karan took the microphone from the mayor and like unscripted was like, I cannot believe we did this. I thought Miss Emily was crazy. But now I'm standing in this building, and I want to bring my kids here someday and tell them that I built this. And I was like, that's it, that's everything. That is what every kid deserves to feel in their school and in their community, and this is also what every community deserves to see in their youth. And so fast forward, so that was like pilot, like just proof of concept. I needed to know that there was something there. And so this program grew and grew, and through a series of Machiavellian political events, I left North Carolina after Chip Zollinger was like driven out by this really evil school board. It was a whole thing. There's actually a documentary about this project called If You Build It, if you want to see like all the drama. But we left North Carolina, and I brought the same program back to the Bay Area, to Berkeley, I'm from loosely the Bay Area. And so if you know Berkeley versus like Bertie County, this is not the same vibe at all. But I really wanted to prove that like an idea like this, the idea of building something with young people in community, is needed and can work anywhere. And so we ran this program in Berkeley for 9 years. And in doing that program, I had the ultimate epiphany, which as I was building these projects, we built tiny homes for unhoused and transitional youth. We built the school library for the school itself. We built this like very cool shipping container classroom. We did a bunch of like really cool projects. But as a female teacher teaching shop class, I started to notice that I had female students who were so smart and so motivated. And this is what would happen. I would say, hey, I need someone to go cut 4 pieces at 96 inches on the chop saw for these framed walls. Who wants to do it? And in the like 0.5 seconds that it took for someone to raise their hand, I would see my female students, their eyes would light up, and then they would look around, and then they would not volunteer. And in that time, there would be a male student that would be like, I got it, Miss Emily. And this would just happen over and over and over again. So I'm sure like most of the women in this room know this moment of like you're doing this social calculus, like immediately all the time. Like, do I belong in this room? How do I prove I belong in this room? Does this person think I don't belong here? How do I, like, it's just deafening. And so I started pulling out groups of just my female students, and I would just say, like, let's go over here and frame this wall, just us. And we would go frame the wall, and it was like magic. All of that social calculus, like, let's say that takes up 40% of your mental energy, is gone. Like, now you can just do the thing, you can communicate with your team members. It was like a totally different classroom. And so I wanted to explore this further, like, what would it mean to have an all-female, non-binary, gender non-conforming, like, what does it mean to create a community of builders with these identities? And so this is sort of like the work I've been doing for since 2013, so the last 13 years, which is to envision and try to work towards this idea of, like, what does it mean to live in a world built by women? I don't mean exclusively women, but if you, like, I hate playing this game. I'll, like, walk through a city or down a street, and everything you see, there's like a 95% chance that thing was designed and built by a man. This is just like the history of our public space and our built world. But I love playing this other game of, like, what would this hospital room look and feel like if it had been designed by mothers? When I was giving birth, I remember looking around the hospital room, and I was like, why did they put a clock right across from my bed? That is the last thing I need there. And I was like, if mothers had designed this space, it would look so different. So anyway, this dream of a world built by women has really guided the last 13 years of my work and life. Just to give you a little context, I know there are similar statistics in tech generally and in, like, almost every subset of tech. It's all quite depressing. In construction, only 11% of the industry is female. That includes, like, project managers, the marketing people, the accountant, the administrative assistants. On actual construction sites, it's 4%, which people were thrilled because 2 years ago it went from 3% to 4%. And they were like, 33% increase. I'm like, well, okay. So, but I like showing these statistics because they're so depressing. But there's this sub-story that doesn't get told, and I feel like we need to tell it because it sort of defies these statistics, which is that women have always been a part of building the world. We just don't get celebrated in the same way. So here's 3 really quick examples. On the far left is Waterloo Bridge in London. It's also called the Women's Bridge. This is a bridge that was barely begun, and then World War II happened, and all the men went off to war. This is very similar to the Rosie the Riveter story. All these women came in, trained to be welders, and built this bridge. This is a group of women in the middle from Utah, in and around Salt Lake City. This is an enterprise they started called The House That She Built. They build homes using exclusively female labor, from, like, the architectural drawings to the plumbing, everything. And then they sell the home, and they use that money to fund scholarships for women to go into the trades. And then on the right, does anyone know who this is? So this is Tabitha Babbitt, who invented the circular saw. She was a Shaker woman, and I've been hearing about patents this morning. Because she was a Shaker woman, there was this belief that you can't have individual ownership of an idea. It was communal property, so she did not file the patent. So other people filed the patent, but she invented this because she saw people using the 2-man saws going this way, and they only cut on the pole stroke. She was like, this is inefficient. So she took her spinning wheel, like the Sleeping Beauty, that thing, and designed a blade that would go on her spinning wheel and that would cut in a circle. So we've been here, and I just, both these things are true. There's a high underrepresentation of women in construction, and we've kind of always been here. So all of these things sort of led me to the creation of what is now Girls Garage. And I want to just share, like, a couple quick themes or lessons from the work of Girls Garage. And the first, like, comes from its founding in the first place, that when I had my female students framing walls over here, it was so magical, but it was still in the context of this, like, public school classroom, which is great, but I was like, what would it mean to have a building that was not also a church, a school, a community center, a building that said Girls Garage on it, where girls will walk by and be like, oh, that's a space for me? What is it? And walk in and feel inspired to do this kind of work. So I needed for it to be its own space, and I needed for it to be a space that was celebratory, inviting, and where the ways in which you identify in the world, as a girl, as a youth of color, as a queer young person, as a this, that, whatever, that's not baggage you have to check at the door. That's like, actually, I need you to walk in with that, because that is what makes the work meaningful. And so Girls Garage is a physical space. We're based in Berkeley. We opened in 2013. This is a physical space where youth, young women, and gender-expansive kids, starting at age 9, can come and take classes in carpentry, welding, design, build, architecture, project management, like all levels of construction interests. We also have an activist art class. All of our high school students attend for free. And the vast majority, like almost 2/3 of our students, stay with us for 5 or more years, which is crazy if you think about it. Like I have friends who are elementary school teachers, and they're like, I have a kid for a year, and then they're gone. Like, there are kids that have been in this program from 9 to 18, and it is like a second home to them. So the architecture nerd in me is like, this space has to scream, you belong here. And so some of the ways we do that, like, it's a very bright and beautiful space. We have this neon sign on the wall that says, we are builders. The first thing you see when you walk in is this, you know how like museums have donor walls? So this is like our version of that, but it's our community wall where every student has a little tile with their name on it. So you walk in and you know you belong here because your name is right there, right next to the donors and right next to our clients. It's all our community. We also have, so when you first walk in, there's this blue wall in the back that says Fear Less, Build More. This is our slogan. We worked with this creative agency that came up with the slogan, and when they presented it to me, I was like, I hate it. How dare you imply that young girls are scared? Like, that's so insulting. And then I thought about it forever, and I was like, you know, actually, like, that is the thing that needs to be said, that you don't have to walk in here fearlessly. You actually should walk in here with a little bit of fear, because it's a thing you've never done before. And I mean, fear when using a chop saw is important. Like, I don't want you to not be scared of a tool that can cut your limb off. So instead of like trying to be this fearless, like impenetrable thing, let's just acknowledge we're all afraid and we're gonna do the thing anyway. So we talk a lot about bravery, and actually you'll notice, so that slogan is right above the very scary 12-inch miter saw. This is Soleil. She's 9 years old in this photo. This is her first time ever using this chop saw. She's now in our graduating class of 2026, going to college next year. She's been with us the whole time. This is also this like practicing of bravery, which we talk about this all the time. It's like a muscle. Like, you do it once, it's super scary. You do it 10 more times, it's less scary. Then you get to a point where, you know, your fear is still there, but you have enough confidence where you can do it, and maybe you also can teach it to a new person who is as scared as you were the first time. This is especially true with MIG welding, which is this like explosion of sparks. And if you're 9 years old, spoiler alert, they don't make welding helmets for 9-year-olds. But it's a scary thing to like put on all that gear and make all these sparks. We talk about it with 9-year-olds as like, you're wielding a lightning bolt. That is literally how this works. And so whatever superhero in your mind wields a lightning bolt, like, that's what you're doing. But these are the first two things we like to do with kids, the chop saw and MIG welding, because it just kind of like breaks down that first layer of bravery. And also doing that alongside someone that looks like me or that looks like my colleague Augusta, like, you're with your people, and that feels safe too. We also believe very much in the power of the cohort and keeping students sort of like with their think of this as like your soccer team, but you're building. There's often a group of kids that we put together. Most of them don't go to school with each other or know each other, and then they sort of travel together over the years. And this is a really special thing too. Like, there are many kids that come to Girls Garage and they say, I have never been in a space that's all girls that isn't toxic or catty. Like, didn't know this could be a thing. So that's important to us too, is like, how do you create a space that doesn't just work for the individual, but like the whole group of women as proof that there's another model of sisterhood. So just like by the numbers, you don't have to read all these, but a couple important things to know about Girls Garage is that our programming is free, which is very important. All of our projects we do pro bono for other nonprofits. So like a community garden will be like, we need 12 planter boxes, and we're like, we got you. Kids stay with us for many, many, many years. The vast majority of our students identify as and or youth of color and or low and middle income. And a lot of them, like I think, there you go, 60%. Actually, it was a little bit higher this graduating class, go into the trades, engineering, architecture. These industries that I would say are responsible for the creation of our built and physical world. So after forming Girls Garage, and I should also say like the very first camp that I ran was a summer camp, and I had no idea at the time, I'm like, is this even gonna be a thing? And I put up signs at every middle school and high school, and it sold out in 3 days. And to this day, we have a wait list of like 160 people. So anyone who says, girls are not interested, I'm like, I don't wanna hear it. I don't wanna hear it, it's just not true. So once you've created this space, and in the creation of a space, you are also creating a community. And so you have this obligation to say like what that community believes in for itself and also in relationship to the greater community. And so one commitment that we've made is to use our tools, like our literal tools, to be good community members and to each other, and to look outside our community and say like, what do we need? Let's go build it. So just a couple projects that I love that I think exemplify this. So during COVID, if we want to go back to March 2020, when the like official shutdown, lockdown happened, we were like, how are we going to teach carpentry via Zoom? Turns out it's not that fun. So luckily, we did what we could, and we did teach carpentry via Zoom. I brought like builder kits to every kid's home so I could, whatever. When June rolled around, and the second they said, okay, construction is an essential industry, construction can come back, like you can do construction sites again. We were like, great, let's go. And one of the first organizations that reached out to us at this time was this urban farm that provides free CSA boxes of organic produce and eggs to like hundreds of families in their community, which is a food desert. This is North Richmond. And they said, we have like hundreds more families that need food right now because COVID, and we don't have enough chickens, we don't know where to put them, we need 100 more chickens, we need a coop. And so we built them a chicken coop in response to COVID. This is a project that we built in 5 days. These are some of our high school students who we came together, we're like, how do we build a chicken coop for 100 chickens? There's like chicken math of like square feet per chicken for what you can call free range. And so, and I may be getting this wrong in hindsight, but I think it's like 5 square feet per chicken. Anyway, we made it big enough to call them free range. And so this chicken coop is like a large coop for roosting and then this huge run. And so this was like one way that we knew we could help, not just this organization, but all the families that the organization serves. This is the side view of this. And we did this very fun like barn door that we weren't planning on doing, and then there was a ton of scrap, and so we threw together this barn door. Similarly, when we look out to our community, a lot of our youngest kids, like the 9 and 10-year-olds, they don't quite think about community yet in like the super expansive way that we do as adults. For them, community is like my elementary school or like the other kids that live on my block. And so one project that came about because of our 9 and 10-year-olds is a lot of kids that age in Berkeley go to this place called Adventure Playground, which is like, I'm shocked it even exists because it seems like ripe for 500 lawsuits per year, because you basically go into this playground, you sign a waiver, and your kid, there's like lumber everywhere, nails everywhere, and they can just like build stuff, take stuff apart. It looks like Mad Max. It's weird, but it exists, and kids love it. And so Adventure Playground, which is run by the city, a bunch of our students were like, let's build something for Adventure Playground. So we pitched this playground to them, and they were like, great, yes, you're going to build it for free? Go, do it. So we designed and built this whale skeleton-shaped playground for Adventure Playground. And what was so cool about this project is, like, as we're building it, the playground was still open, and so there were all these little kids that would be like, what are you building? And we're like, oh, we're building a whale playground. And then they would, like, jump in and hammer in a 2x6 or whatever. There was this camp of other middle school girls who were part of an engineering camp. They were learning 3D printing, and they're like, oh, can we 3D print handholds to turn the side of the whale into a rock climbing wall? And we're like, great, do that. And so this final whale playground became this like weird mishmash of like our architectural skeleton, these 3D printed handholds, this like spout, and I don't know if you can see on the left side, that's supposed to represent the mouth and the baleen. And there's these little ornaments like of SpongeBob creatures. So this was truly like by kids for kids. And like what a special way to celebrate the public spaces for kids than to invite kids to build it themselves. These are all the kids that built it from our camp as well as the engineering camp. And then, so the last example I have of community, I think community is not just about being of service, right? It's also about like understanding who you are as a community and responding to that. So in 2022, we do a survey every year and we just ask kids various questions about like, how's the program going? Is there something you'd like to do? And in that year, the percentage of kids that identified as queer went up like 50% in 1 year. And we're like, oh, this is so interesting. Let's investigate this. And like, what can we also do as an organization to celebrate this? So we were invited by the San Francisco Pride Parade to build a parade float. We were like, this is perfect. And so we asked students, we had like 100 students work on this project over the course of 2 months. We said, what should we build? They said, well, obviously we should build a giant toolbox. So this is the giant toolbox on wheels, all these screen printed posters. What does a giant toolbox need? It needs giant tools. So we went and scavenged all this junk. This hammer is made from like an old HVAC duct. And the saw is like layers of insulation foam. And then we marched in the parade with this giant toolbox and giant tools. And it was just like such an important way for us to say to our own students, like, you are our first community and we see you. And this is a place where not only are you seen, but like your identity, even as it's evolving, can also be the inspiration for our work. I've been hearing so much this morning about mentorship, and you can't do this work as a grown-up without thinking about your role as a mentor. It's been really interesting. I had an amazing mother and grandmothers, but I did not really have female mentors that worked in architecture or construction. And so when I started Girls Garage, I thought very intentionally about like what model of mentorship is going to make the most mentors available to the most kids. And I think we all kind of have this predisposed idea that mentorship is often someone from this generation talking to someone from this generation in a very kind of like one-way street, like I shall impart my wisdom unto you. And that is valid, and like that is a form of mentorship. And in spaces like Girls Garage, there are many, many others. And so we talk about mentorship at Girls Garage as an ocean, not a river, that it has to be this like ecosystem of lots of different things and not just the flow of water or knowledge in one direction. So this is our staff. Obviously, we are like the front line of mentors. We're the people who are in front of and with kids every day. We come from all different kinds of backgrounds. We are engineers, we're welders, carpenters, architects, did I say engineers? Engineers, public school teachers, special education educators, and on and on. So this is a very obvious one, like just having mentors who have walked in your shoes, who have lived experiences like you, who look like you. But then there's also, like, if you have been a part of Girls Garage for 9 years, like Soleil, you are also now a mentor to those incoming 9-year-olds, to your former self who's afraid to use the chop saw. So there's a lot of intergenerational mentorship that happens. We also are very intentional about inviting in elders from our community. This was this beautiful, totally like impromptu project. This group of elder women who are textile artists contacted us and they were like, we operate out of a church basement. We need a sewing table. Can you build us a sewing table? And I was like, sure. Can you teach us how to do what you do? And so they came and we taught them how to use tools to build the table, and they taught us how to do natural dye, which is like one of the things that they do. Another brain trust. And then there's the sort of obvious, like we think about mentorship very intentionally with the industry. Like we need our students to have direct access to women that work in the very jobs they want to have. So we have a really active event schedule of mixers where kids can come and meet like a female project engineer or like a female journey person carpenter, etc. We have students that go directly into internships with our corporate partners and often are then employed by them full time. We have friends down the street who run fabrication labs who say, hey, do you have a student who wants an internship? Nautica wants to learn machining. There you go. And we have students like Erica who were directly mentored by me. This photo on the left is the very first camp we ever ran in 2013, the one that sold out in 3 days. So this is me teaching her how to weld. She is now 23 years old and works as a project engineer for Novo Construction. And she is now a mentor at Girls Garage, and she's actually our alumni ambassador. We can't get rid of her. She's like, yeah, she is now in a role of mentorship to pay that back or forward, however you want to think about it. And then we also, like, having an alumni network, so we've now graduated like hundreds of kids into this industry, and it turns out they really want to stick together. And so we created an alumni network. They talk via Slack, they meet quarterly, they have monthly meetings, and these are kids that like go to colleges all over the country. Some of them live locally, some of them are working, some of them are not. And they continue to come together. This was a stained glass workshop just to be in each other's company. And I think like this is a good reminder for us too that mentorship doesn't always have to be about like the interview you have next Monday or like what advice do you need for your career. It's also just like about bearing witness to someone's growth and life as they're figuring stuff out. This also leads me, this stained glass window workshop is a great example of this, that at Girls Garage we talk a lot about the importance of joy. And I truly, this is a hill I will die on, that joy is our #1 currency. It's really the only thing that matters at the end of the day. And especially now, I feel like for women in particular, insisting that your life has joy in it is also like a stubborn resistance to not be toppled by the forces that be. Like, I am going to live in joy. And that's the thing I really want to model for my students. And so these two projects that I'll just show quickly are examples of like, are these the most community impact projects? Not really, but they were so fun, it doesn't matter. So this is a derby car, like a derby car, yeah, that we built for the San Francisco MoMA Museum artist derby car race. They did this race in the 70s. They invited all these wacky artists to build derby cars, and they raced them down this like famously steep hill in San Francisco. It was kind of a disaster. They didn't do it again until 2023. So we were invited to build a car, and we asked kids, like, what should our derby car be? And they said, obviously it should be a feminist excavator. So we went on Facebook Marketplace, we got this old go-kart, and we turned it into a feminist excavator. It's hard to see in this photo, but it has a license plate that says Fearless and then Build More on the back. Her name is Red Rita. She has a megaphone that plays Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 on a loop. She has a plush leopard print steering wheel cover, and on her bumper, instead of, sorry to be crude, instead of brass testicles, she has a stuffed uterus hanging off of her bumper. So we raced this car down the hill for the Derby race. It was so fun. All the kids, like 30 kids, ran after, down the hill after the Derby car. And we were awarded most joyful at this race. Yeah, this is not a project that has any real social significance other than kids loved doing it, and it was so fun. There's also all these little moments in projects where we think it's about this ADA accessible public bus stop we're building in Vermont for the Vermont Transit Authority. We think it's about this. It's beautiful. It stands up. We're so proud of it. But actually, the things that kids remember about this project was that my mother came with us on the trip to be the house mom, but then ended up wanting to learn how to use the chop saw and then would not get off the chop saw. Or like when in Vermont in August, apparently it starts dumping rain like all of a sudden, and we had rain circle dances or a limbo competition. These are the things that those kids remember. And so just like always staying rooted in joy as not like an add-on, but like actually the central experience of the work we do together has been really, really grounding and important, not just for me as a grown-up and leader, but for every single kid that walks in the door. And then the last thing I want to share is just like, it's been 13 years, and I think a lot of us that work for companies or are sort of like driven by like the strategic plan, like I can't tell you how many times people are like, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? And I'm like, ask me in 4.5. Like I know in my heart, where, like ethically and philosophically what I want to be doing, and I have no idea what it's going to look like because my job is to listen to kids and do what they need. And so I'm very interested in this slightly different model of growth that's not about like where we're going, but how we get there. And so in 2023, we outgrew the space I showed you. Like literally, we built this geodesic dome that was 20 feet in diameter, and we couldn't get it out the door, so we had to we literally outgrew the space. So we moved into a larger space that's absolutely gorgeous. It's a bigger shop. There's a lot of things that are the same about it, like fear less, build more, being above the chop saw. It has all the same soul. It's just bigger and better. We have a living room now where our giant tools live. You can kind of see it in this photo. I'm on the right, and I have a 3-month-old strapped to me. So when I say grow also, we have 18 staff people, and in 4 years, there have been 12 babies born. It was like contagious for a minute. It became a joke that like there was 1 or more pregnant people on our staff for like 4 straight years. So growth also means this, like as an organization led by women, like what's our responsibility to create a woman-friendly workplace? We have like a year of parental leave if you want it. You get a 8-week sabbatical every 4 years. There's unlimited time off. During summer camp, we have like 3 toddlers in a like childcare room because there are people that have to bring their kids to work. So this is also like about growth for me as a leader, like how do I continue to adapt so that people want to continue to work at Girls Garage? This also means, this is such a silly thing to show, but I think it's pretty representative. When we moved into this new space, in our old space, we had 1 bathroom and it was disgusting. And I was like, when we move into this new space, I am in charge of the bathrooms. And they are going to be so gorgeous, you never want to leave. Because this is not like a silly thing. When preteen and teen girls come to Girls Garage and they feel that social anxiety or that fear, they go into the bathroom for 3 minutes to take a breath and center themselves, or go on their phone for a minute. Like that is your private space. So I wanted these 2 spaces to be like that acknowledgement that like you just sometimes need a minute. The one on the left we call Dark and Stormy, and the one on the right we call Dusty Rose, and there's this like ongoing battle debate over which is better. Currently, Dusty Rose has the edge by like a handful of votes. The community wall is still the first thing you see when you walk in. It's grown. We actually have a second wall now. And when we opened this space, this is the ribbon cutting. And I think about when I opened the first space, it was like just me opening the door for the first time and hoping someone walked in. This is a group of, so I was up there ready to cut the ribbon, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. There's a councilwoman, with the giant city scissors, and I was like, no. I'm like, if you're a student or an alumni or a kid that wants to come here, like, get up here, a staff person, and so we all cut this ribbon together. And so I'm just reminded that, like, I knew that Girls Garage would be a success. Like, I knew that people would be interested in it. As a side note, I'm so sick of when people ask me, or women in general, like, did you have any idea that this was going to be a thing? And I'm like, yeah, of course I did. That's why I did it. Like, there was a need, and I responded to it. Like, we don't always have to be like, no, I had no idea. Of course I did. But I didn't know what it would look like exactly. And the whole point is that it looks like listening, and it looks like our kids are always the North Star, and whatever they need and want, that's where we go. And so this is where that has led us. So I'll just end with this. This is like one of my favorite quotes from this poet, Cleo Wade. And I think it's just a good reminder that everyone in this room, myself included, like, this is very, very true. Like, we are building the world, and that is a big responsibility. It's very exciting. And we have an obligation to do that together and with people who don't generally get invited into those rooms. This is my last image. So this is going back to me on the ladder in Belize and how special that was for me. This is my student Naomi. This is in so let's say this is 25 years later. My student Naomi up on a ladder doing the same thing. The only difference between these two photos is that surrounded by other young women. And I came across this photo and I realized that, and I was like, wow, that's the difference of 25 years. What is the third photo in this series going to look like? And what is our role in creating that image? Thank you so much. Thank you.